WRHU. Radio Hofstra University.
Every quaternion, each person from every corner of the globe gathers to celebrate the Olympics. From the mountains of Olympus to peaks of the Fuji,
a sensational gold medal performance.
WRHU brings you coverage of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics.
The United States will win the gold medal.
Featuring lively discussion about the competitions
The last individual swing for Michael Phelps in his Olympic career.
and interviews with past
Feel great. I'm on cloud nine right now.
and current Olympians.
We needed to not just make our routines, we needed to hit our very best routines.
Hey, this is Lizanne Murphy.
Hi, this is Kyla Ross.
Hey, this is D'Angelo Hancock.
Hey, this is Mike Canty.
Hey, this is Nate Ebner. Hi, everybody. This is Tom Quirk.
I declare open the games.
You're listening to Tokyo Tonight.
Tokyo Tonight.
Tokyo Tonight.
This is Tokyo Tonight.
Live from the Richard Philip Cavallero studio on the campus of Hofstra University, I'm Edward Mabeza along with my co-host Max Sacco. Welcome to Tokyo Tonight, WRHU's coverage and analysis of the 2020 Summer Olympics. Tonight is our closing ceremony of the Olympics, and we are recapping the last 2 weeks, and our own Josh Linsenberg was able to sit down with Kenny Albert, the play-by-play announcer for NBC's Olympic coverage of beach and indoor volleyball. Max, it has been a long 2 weeks, hard 2 weeks for every single country in the world. What happened?
Look, it's been a long, hard 2 weeks for us, too, having to put this show together, but we'll get back to that in a little bit. A lot happened. I mean, USA and China, that's always the big race for most medals. This year, USA ran away with the medal count, ran away in the overall medal count, but the medals for overall gold came down to the last day, and actually one of the last events of the last day, the Omnium, the indoor track cycling. Here's what happened when the USA got their win.
At the Tokyo Olympic Games, Jen Valente, the 26-year-old from San Diego, California, one corner to American cycling history. Jen Valente, the first ever woman from the U.S. to win a gold medal in track cycling at the Olympics.
What an incredible.
Sound courtesy of NBC. The U.S. ekes out China 39-38 in golds, and Ed, it comes down to an event most Americans don't even know about, the Omnium.
Now, the thing about the Omnium, I believe it is in that arena where it's like kind of like a curve, like kind of a NASCAR track, but it's indoors. And
it's the indoor track cycling. Indoor track cycling.
So they have the, I believe, the 4 bikes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they go around in a circle, and then one of them in the front has to swing out and go to the back, right? In that type of circuit?
Yep.
Now, the crazy thing about this is that even though the United States was leading in medals, China was leading throughout the last week in gold medals. Just to give you a view of that, the United States but finished off the Olympics a total of 39 and China 38 gold medals. Extremely close.
Right at the wire. I mean, it doesn't get much closer than that for those two. Now, overall, and we'll get to that later, we'll at least say it now, United States 113, one of the best Olympics they've had in a while. China 88 in the top 2 fight. But the U.S. on that final day had a huge day in other sports. I mean, Ed, where do we start? Women's volleyball got gold. Women's basketball got gold. Allison Felix writes her name in the record book. I mean, where do you even start to look on that last day of competition?
I mean, basically every single news outlet has been calling the United States the, quote, the United States of gold. I mean, out of the 206 countries that won medals, 93 did, but the United States taking the majority of them. We could start off with the biggest story of the Olympics. Team USA Gymnastics, of course, Simone Biles had to pull out for the majority of the competition due to twisties. Now, twisties is a gymnastics lingo for losing not consciousness but awareness in the air, and that was detrimental towards her mental health and her performance. Therefore, she had to pull out. Now, everyone was in support of her, but she was able to return to a bronze medal in the balance beam, winning 14 points, and now she has a total of 7 Olympic medals and received silver in the all-team artistic all-around.
I mean, the team fought through a lot. And you heard about Suni Lee had to go pull off of social media. She got gold in individual artistic all around with a score of 57.433. But kind of an underlying theme of that gymnastics team was both the extreme positives of social media versus the extreme negatives of social media. And I think you saw it most come to a head on that gymnastics floor.
Exactly. Because the main focus of the gymnastics floor was Simone Biles and her having to pull out. Now, it just reminds you that all these athletes are human.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest thing. All the pressure's on them. The world is looking at them, not just the United States, but the world. And it is amazing the outcome that they were able to pull out of. Moving on, of course, everyone's favorite, Team USA basketball.
Oh, yeah.
Now, men's won 87-82 against France. That is their 4th straight gold medal. Kevin Durant passes Carmelo Anthony as the all-time leading scorer with a total of 339 career points.
I'm not surprised. Well, I take that back. I was thinking about the women. I thought too far ahead. But for this men's team, I didn't think they'd get gold. I'm going to be honest.
You saw in the prelims where they weren't exactly in their momentum. They were falling a little bit. They actually lost against France in the prelim round, didn't they?
And then they got lucky. They got to play a very weak Iran team in world rankings, and they got to play another weaker team, I believe was Ukraine. They kind of walked through prelims after that France wake-up call. But it was a wake-up call. You know, people forget in Olympics you play by international rules. There's a lot less fouling. It's a lot more of a physical game, a lot more focused on defense, whether the NBA is more focused on offense. It's a completely different play style. And the men, it might have taken a while, but when they finally clicked and adapted to those rules, they wrote it out. I'm going to say squeaked out because last couple Olympics they've won by 20 or 30 in that gold medal game. Squeaked out a gold win against France. Not a surprise. Now, as for the women, they beat a Japan team that was the fairy tale of the story, weren't expected to go anywhere. Japan women's basketball gets to the final. They beat them by almost 25, winning 90-75. It's winning by about 15 if I did my math right. You're the engineer. You can check me on that one. 55 straight wins, 7 straight medals, 7th straight gold medal, that is. It doesn't get that much better than that.
It does not get much better than that. And let's not forget that Nike actually called Teams USA women's basketball the greatest sports dynasty of all time. I mean, that has to have a huge ring to that.
It does. It absolutely has to. Last time they did not win gold, if anyone was wondering, Barcelona, 1992. They took bronze that year.
So moving on from that, Team USA volleyball becoming a big component here. Now, the A team, honestly, this was my favorite event of the entire
talking beach,
Olympics.
by the way.
Beach volleyball, A team. They won a 2-0 sweep against Australia in their final match, which I thought was amazing. Other than that, women's indoor against Brazil also swept 3-0. And then the longest-lasting volleyball player for the Team USA Olympics, Phil Hauser, retired as a 4-time Olympian.
Well, Phil Hauser, you hear about his story. He wasn't even going to this year's Olympics. He was at his home in Hawaii when he got the phone call saying, one of our guys is out, we need you to come in on short notice. He had to be partnered with someone he's never been partnered with. He got to the quarterfinals, and a lot of people wrote off Team USA, well, at least that version of Team USA beach volleyball, as countries can enter in multiple teams, as the team that's going to lose out in the group stage. I consider it a win for him. He even made it out of the group stage, out of the round 16 into the quarterfinal. I think that's a win.
Now, the biggest news coming out of Team USA is actually not basketball or volleyball, but is track and field, the premier sport for the Olympics. And I believe it's actually called athletics, not track and field.
It's athletics.
Now, the myth, the legend, Allison Felix is now the most decorated track and field Olympian with 11 medals. And in the last event, ending in gold in the 4x400 relay with Sydney McLaughlin, Delilah Muhammad, Athing Mu to finish in 3 minutes, 16.85 seconds, and that is her 7th consecutive gold medal.
Well, she's the GOAT of track and field. But I want to just add here, Athing Mu, it got overshadowed because that's the day Simone Biles came back onto the gymnastics floor. It got overshadowed. She won gold in the women's 800 meter. First American to win gold in the women's 800 since 1968, I believe.
Wow.
Completely overshadowed. It got some media attention, but I need to bring it up. I can't do her justice if you don't mention that she broke an over 50-year hiatus on American women winning gold in the 800, and she shattered it to almost breaking the Olympic record.
Wow. I mean, moving on from that, the same thing too with Sydney McLaughlin and Delilah Muhammad for the 400-meter hurdle. Basically, Sydney broke her own record. She has a new world record of the 400-meter hurdle, 51.46 seconds, breaking her own previous record of 51-90. Now, of course, speaking more about world records, Karsten Wollholm, moving a little from Team USA, Karsten Wollholm of Norway also broke his record in the same event, the 400-meter hurdle, along with Rye Benjamin. But moving back onto Allison Felix, when she was pregnant, I believe Nike had dropped her.
They did.
As a sponsored athlete.
They did. She got picked up by Adidas after she saw that she was still competing, but she was dropped by Nike. I do know that.
And look where we are now.
World record holder. Amazing. What can we say here? We have about 3-ish minutes left on Olympic Talk before we go to our feature interview with Kenny Albert. Ed, I want to jump ahead a bit here. This year was big because a lot of Olympic sports made their debut. Some came back. The news obviously broke. Baseball and softball will not be returning to Paris 2024 as they're looking to make it more events that have a male and female bracket. Breakdancing will take their place. But 4 sports will be returning: karate, skateboarding, sport climbing, and surfing. Ed, I'll ask you just kind of friend to friend here. Which one was your favorite? Which one would you could do without if it didn't come back for Paris 2024?
I wouldn't say go without, but
it's a tough way to see. You know what I'm trying to go
I know
for.
what you're trying to go to, but there is no way that I can go without karate. Now, I used to compete in karate. I'm a first-degree black belt.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, but speaking of it, the men's kumite in 75 kilogram, Iran versus Saudi Arabia. Now, this match was interesting because Saudi Arabia lost in a hansoku, which is basically a disqualifying penalty.
What is a hansoku for give us simple terms here. Like, how is that just the name of a penalty?
That is the name of a penalty.
That's just the formal name for a penalty. Okay.
Yes. And also in women's kumite in the 61 kilogram, Egypt versus Azerbaijan. That is a 2-0 sweep. I mean, karate, the thing about karate is not just like fighting like, let's say like UFC or Taekwondo. Basically in karate, there's the kata, which means you have to have a certain form when you're performing or competing. It's not just throwing, punching like kickboxing is. There's a certain form that you have to use in order to take down your opponent.
It should be added the winner from Egypt for women's kumite, Feral Al-Abediz, was the first ever woman from Egypt ever to win a gold medal in any event. So why not do it in karate? Why not get some attention there? Won it on the last day of the Olympics. This Olympics, I think it should be noted, or at least put on the record here, this Olympics produced both 17 new world records and also gave, I think, over 20 countries either their first medal or their first gold medal, period. Not just in an event, but period.
I mean, basically, this Olympics is essentially the creation of world history. Now, a lot of people going to this year's Olympics because of COVID, because of all the restrictions and the coincidence that are happening today. Not a lot of people were very interested in what was going on in the Olympics. But surprisingly enough, this is a world record and world history maker event of these last 2 weeks. Isn't that amazing? World history made in 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, a lot of world history made in 2 weeks. Ed, you and I both, we live in America, obviously, but
yeah.
You obviously based, you're Filipino, I'm Polish. Your country made some history, one of those 20 countries that was able to get their first medal or first gold medal. I'll let you kind of go on that. Poland had a very successful Olympics this year. I'll just bring it up. David Tomala won the 50-kilometer men's race walk, the last ever running of that event. It will be replaced in Paris with the mixed 25-kilometer race walk where you have to do a transfer over to somebody else to finish out the back half. So Poland walks away with the final ever men's 50-kilometer race walk. You can take it away now about the Philippines, as you guys were in the news pretty much, I'd say, every day of you guys doing. The Philippines had a great Olympics this year.
Oh, yes.
They had a great Olympics this year.
Bouncing off you, the Philippines made their first gold medal debut as Hilden Diaz in weightlifting for the women's 55 kilogram, basically dominated the competition. Not only that, in silver, Neshi Peccio in boxing for the women's feather, and Carlo Paalam in boxing in men's flyweight. And going for bronze was Amir Marshall in boxing for the men's middle.
I did not know the Philippines, one, ran with so many boxers, or two, were that good at boxing, where they have multiple medalists in multiple weight classes.
I mean, we are the land of Manny Pacquiao.
It
only makes sense that we go in for fighting, especially for boxing.
I'll give you that one. Poland primarily winning in rowing in the 4x400 relays and track, also winning in rowing, but the big one, the gold in the 50-kilometer men's race walk.
And that is it for our Olympic talk. Coming up next, we have an interview with Kenny Albert, a multi-time Olympic broadcaster, brought to you by Josh Linsenberg.
I'm Joshua Linsenberg, and it is my pleasure to be joined by the voice of the 2021 Stanley Cup Finals on NBC, play-by-play broadcaster from the MLB and NFL on Fox, play-by-play radio broadcaster for the New York Rangers, and 2020 Tokyo Olympic play-by-play announcer Kenny Albert. Kenny, thanks for joining Tokyo tonight. How are you doing?
I'm great, Josh. How are you?
Doing well. So let's dive right into it, Kenny. You've been quite a busy man this year, from calling the 2021 Stanley Cup Finals for the NHL on NBC to now calling the Olympics. From a prep standpoint, how were you able to coordinate everything considering the magnitude of your schedule?
Well, calling the Stanley Cup Final was a huge thrill. I had worked the Cup Final on the radio on several occasions, and this was my first opportunity on the television side. So it was a lot of fun and great to work with Eddie Olczyk and Brian Boucher and Pierre Maguire. And then about 2 weeks later, began the Olympic assignment. Now, it's a little bit different this summer in that I'm working out of the studio in Stamford, Connecticut. Some of the NBC broadcasters are in Tokyo, but I would say about 75% are in the U.S. calling games off monitors, which a lot of us have gotten used to over the last year. During the pandemic, I worked at least 30, I would say, hockey games off monitors and probably 25 basketball games during the past season. And I'm also working a new sport that I wasn't as familiar with, beach volleyball, some indoor volleyball. So I was studying throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs. And then as we got closer, really dove into the various teams and players on both the men's and women's side, and also had the opportunity to work 2 baseball games over the last 3 or 4 days involving Team USA, one against Israel, one against South Korea. So those were a lot of fun as well.
So you just mentioned a new sport for you is volleyball. Tell us a little bit about how NBC assigns who gets what sport. Brendan Burke, who's a hockey play-by-play announcer for the New York Islanders, he's on rowing. How does NBC decide?
Well, I've run into Brendan on a number of occasions at various times of the day and night. Ed Cohen, who's the radio voice of the Knicks, is doing weightlifting. I just saw Ed a little while ago in the NBC cafeteria. To be honest, I wasn't involved in the discussions as far as the assignments. I received a phone call one day about 4 or 5 months ago asking if I would be interested in working beach and indoor volleyball. And working a new sport is a great challenge. I enjoy the variety of sports, as you alluded to earlier, with football, hockey, basketball, and baseball, really for the last 25 or so years. Worked track and field in 2016 in Rio, which was a lot of fun, also a new sport for me. And I'm really enjoying the beach volleyball. It's a lot of fun. I actually went to a beach volleyball match in Rio 5 years ago as a fan. I never had any idea that I would be working beach volleyball from Tokyo, but looking forward to the next couple of days. We have some quarterfinal matchups. So I just got off about a 9 or 10 hour shift. My partner, Amy Gant, and I called 4 matches, 1 indoor volleyball match and then 3 beach volleyball matches. And as far as learning a new sport and the preparation, I did some reading. I watched a lot of the matches from Rio from 2016, the NBC telecasts. Spent some time with a local high school volleyball coach, which was a big help for me. And then Amy Gant, who I mentioned, my partner, who was a member of the U.S. national team back in the late 90s. We were here a couple of days early. We worked some rehearsal matches, so she was a huge resource for me as well.
So diving into indoor and beach volleyball now, as we approach the home stretch of the Olympics, what do you think the keys are for Team USA to bring home gold in volleyball?
Well, I haven't worked any USA matches yet. I've watched some of them on TV, so I probably can't speak about those USA teams as well as I can about some of the others. But on the indoor volleyball side, the United States is still alive. They were eliminated on the men's side. And there's one team still alive, Alex and April on the women's side in beach volleyball, and Gibb and Bourne on the men's side. So those aren't matches that I'll be involved with. I have some of the other quarterfinal matches, and Chris Marlowe and Paul Sonderland and some of the other NBC broadcasters who are actually in Tokyo. They do a terrific job. They've handled most of the United States matches so far.
If you're just tuning in to Tokyo tonight, Joshua Linsenberg here from WRHU Sports, joined by NBC Olympic play-by-play announcer Kenny Albert. So, Kenny, a big matchup goes down, as you just preluded to. on August 3rd for Team USA, beach volleyball against Team Germany with captain April Ross and Alex Kleinman representing Team USA. April and Kleinman, they've been dominant in the Olympics so far with an undefeated record. What makes them such a successful duo?
Well, they're one of the best in the world, as you mentioned. I watched part of their match on television yesterday. They have such a great chemistry together, and they're going to play a terrific team. Laura Ludwig is a medal winner in the past. The other USA team, unfortunately, for the United States was eliminated, but they're called the A team for a couple of reasons, their names and the success that they've had as a pairing, for sure.
And so, speaking of beach volleyball, you get to have a beach volleyball legend alongside you in the virtual booth at NBC Sports, that being Chris Marlowe, gold medal captain of the 1984 U.S. Olympic volleyball team. How awesome is it to have insights on the game on these broadcasts from a volleyball legend?
Well, we've exchanged a couple of emails and voicemail messages. Chris is actually in Tokyo, so I haven't been around him at all. He's over there covering the matches in person while Amy and I are actually in the studio in Stanford. But he's a terrific resource. He's a great guy. He's the voice of the Denver Nuggets as well. So at the start of the volleyball tournament, I definitely relied on Chris for some help with pronunciations and some other information.
So, gotta ask, what's been the schedule like for the Tokyo Olympics? We've talked before this that your sleep schedule is pretty crazy. You're sleeping during the day, calling games at night. How you've been able to deal with that and adapt?
Attempting to sleep during the day. It's not very easy to adjust. It's a 13-hour time difference between Tokyo and New York, so a lot of the matches I'm calling are in the middle of the night, local time. Just to give you a quick example of the last few days, and it's hard to keep track of what day it is. I think today's Monday. Saturday morning, I called a baseball game at 6 a.m. Eastern. Friday as well. So those 2 days, I had the USA baseball games. I had to be there at 4 a.m., so woke up about 3. Called those games, which ended at 9. I was back by 10, tried to get some sleep during the day. Overnight Sunday, Saturday going into Sunday, I called 4 volleyball matches at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 8 a.m., and 9 a.m. Got back to the hotel, slept about 3.5 hours on and off in shifts. Couldn't sleep straight through, unfortunately. And then last night, as we speak, it's about 10:15 in the morning on Monday. I was in 9:30 last night for an interview on the Tokyo Tonight Show with Kenny Mayne and Carrie Champion. We had our first match at 1:20 a.m., which was about 9 hours ago. That was an indoor match, which took 2.5 hours. It was a women's match between Turkey and the Russian team. So that ended about 3:50 a.m. We went right into a beach match at 4 a.m. We had another one at 5 and then another one at 8. So 4 matches overnight, 1:20 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and 8 a.m. Got back to the hotel about 9:30, and now we're chatting around 10:15.
Wow, seems like a crazy schedule. Last question here, Kenny, before we let you go. What's been your favorite part of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics so far?
Well, just being a part of it. It's been so much fun calling beach volleyball, along with Amy Gant. We've had a terrific time. We're watching the matches on probably a smaller screen than most of the viewers in the little booth that we're in. Nothing replicates being there, but given the circumstances with the pandemic and the protocol, many of us are back in Stanford in private booths. But I think one of the most fun things for me has been to see so many of the other broadcasters. You mentioned Brendan Burke earlier, Ed Cohen, Fran Fraschilla, who's working the basketball games, along with Kate Scott, and so many others. AJ Malesko, one of my partners on the NHL and NBC, she's calling field hockey. So I bumped into AJ this morning. So the camaraderie, running into the other announcers in the cafeteria, in the hallways, even though we're not in Tokyo, it really feels like a group effort. They have big Olympic rings right outside the complex. But aside from calling the matches and the baseball games, I think just the camaraderie, being around so many of the other announcers. And the 2 baseball games I worked were so exciting. The U.S. and Israel, it was an 8-1 final score, but there were so many great stories surrounding the Israeli squad. And then the win over South Korea by the United States, 4-2 the next day. For those games, my partner was Jess Mendoza, who was in Tokyo. So I was actually working with a partner who was over 6,500 miles away. And technically, it was pretty flawless, I have to say. There was no delay as far as hearing each other and communicating, and working with Jess was a lot of fun as well.
Love to hear it, Kenny. So, Kenny, this has been a pleasure. We appreciate you taking some time out of your sleep schedule during the day to chat with us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Josh. Hopefully I'll be asleep in less than 10 minutes. But thanks for having me on, and enjoy the rest of the summer.
Thank you. Once again, that was NBC Olympic play-by-play announcer Kenny Albert. For WRHU Sports, I'm Joshua Linsenberg.
Hey, this is Mike Ante, 2004 Olympic silver medalist, and you're listening to Tokyo Tonight from the 3-time Marconi Award-winning non-commercial radio station, Radio Hofstra University.
And a huge thank you to Josh Linsenberg and Kenny Albert for the interview. You know, all show we've been talking with former Olympians, and we figured for the last one we hear about former Olympians. Let's hear about the other side of the camera, the broadcasters, what their prep looks like as they get ready for the Olympics. But we're not done yet, folks. We have a couple more things to get through, just like the sports update with Ryan Pagano.
From the Philip Cavallero Sports Desk, this is your Tokyo Tonight Sports Update.
With your Tokyo Tonight Sports Update, I'm Ryan Pagano. Over on the Diamond, the Yankees are in Kansas City tonight to take on the Royals. Jameson Taillon faces Carlos Hernandez in the first game of the series, with first pitch set for 8:10. Elsewhere in the baseball world, the Cincinnati Reds lead the Cleveland Indians 1-0 in the bottom of the first. The Milwaukee Brewers head to Wrigley Field to take on the Cubs at 8:05. The Chicago White Sox will face off against the Minnesota Twins at 8:10. And finally, the Miami Marlins are in San Diego tonight to face the Padres, where first pitch is set for 10:10. From the diamond to the hardwood, both New York teams have Summer League action today. The Nets currently trail the Memphis Grizzlies 50-56, with 3:13 to go in the third quarter. As for the Knicks, they defeated the Indiana Pacers earlier today, 94-86. With your Tokyo Tonight Sports Update, I'm Ryan Pagano. Now let's go back to your hosts, Ed Mabeza and Max Sacco.
And welcome back to Tokyo Tonight, WRHU's coverage of the 2020 Summer Olympics. We are about to round off the show, but before we do that, let's get our final medal count for these Olympics. In first place is the United States with a total of 39 for gold, 41 for silver, 33 for bronze, and 113 in total. Coming up next is China rounding at second, 38 gold, 32 silver, 18 bronze, and 88 in total. Up next is ROC, the Russian Olympic Council, that is 20 in gold, 28 in silver, 23 in bronze, and with a total of 71. Coming in at number 4 is Great Britain with 22 gold, 21 silver, 22 bronze, coming out at 65. And in fifth place is Japan with 27 gold, 14 silver, 17 bronze, and 58 in total.
And it should be noted here, it's the final show. Might as well hear who rounded out the top 10 here. Coming in sixth was Australia with 46 total, 17 gold, 7 silver, 22 bronze. Italy came in 7th, 10 gold, 10 silver, 20 bronze with 40. Germany in 8th, 10 gold, 11 silver, 16 bronze for 37. The Netherlands sneak in at 9th place with 10 gold, 12 silver, 14 bronze for 36. And in 10th place, France, 10 gold, 12 silvers, 11 bronze medals for 33 overall. Your final medal count at Tokyo 2020.
Now, this has been a crazy and substantial Olympics. Definitely one for the history books. And thank you all for joining us here at WRHU covering it. We want to give a huge special thank you to Stacey Clark, Director of Talent Negotiations and Business Affairs for NBC Sports Group, Bruce Avery, which is the General Manager, John Mullen for the Operations Manager, Pete Silverman as our Professional in Residence, Andrew Bacigalupo for our Sports Director, and Kate O'Brien as the News Director.
We also want to thank all the people who did interviews for this show. Cassidy Slamman, Jake April, Tim Crowley, Kate O'Brien again, JJ Beal, Will Thompson, Maddie Perkins, Danny DiCrescenzo, and Josh Linsenberg. You guys really stepped up big time, and you can put on your resume you spoke to an Olympian.
Coming up for our package team, we have Michael Richardson, Ralph Basha, Jack Lighting, Cassidy Slamman, Ryan Genio, Griffin Schmoyer, Ryan Pagano, Johnson DeSousa, Yal Bonsu, and Josh Linsenberg.
And finally, for our hosts, we want to thank Will Wiggleman, Jack McCarthy, Cassidy Slamman, Lindsey Hill, Louis Grasso, Crystal Bermudez, Ryan Ginio, Ralph Basha, J.R. Brooks Davis, Danny DiCrescenzo, Sam Seivert, Griffin Schmoyer, Kayla McKechnie, Bo Dragone, J.J. Beal, and Tim Crowley for stepping up to the hosting plate.
Our engineers for the last 2 weeks were Michael Corson, Maddie Perkins, Ryan Pagano, and Jonathan DeSousa.
Giving our news updates, and a huge thank you to the WRHU News Department as well, with their news director Kate O'Brien, Crystal Bermudez, Ryan Pagano, Lindsey Hill, Cassidy Slamman, Hannah Greenberg, Danny DiCrescenzo, and Sam Seivert.
Our sports update was brought to you by Ryan Pagano, Eric Bellier, Yal Bounsu, Ralph Basha, Jack Leiden, Griffin Schmoyer, Danny DiCrescenzo, Josh Linsenberg, and Brendan Gambetsky.
And a thank you to our interviews with Thomas Bower, silver medalist in rowing, Allie-Ann Pompey, 4-time Olympian for Guyana, Dot Richardson, gold medalist in softball, Liz-Ann Murphy, 2-time Olympian for Team Canada women's basketball, and a Hofstra alumni, Mike Ante, silver medalist in shooting, Giangelo Hancock, 2020 Olympian for wrestling, Kyla Ross, gold medalist in gymnastics, Nate Ebner, another gold medalist for Team USA here, Brad Wilkerson, gold medalist for Team USA Baseball, Tracy Fuchs, a 3-time Olympian for USA Field Hockey, Kenny Albert for broadcasting the Olympics, and Lloyd Chalupny, another medalist in women's field hockey. A lot of thank yous, Ed. A lot of thank yous.
Big thank you to everyone, and thank you especially to NBC Universal for allowing us to be your partner in this 2020 Olympics broadcast.
I don't think people understand how many contracts we had to read through and look through and sign.
All the legal stuff
and
that
all
we
the
had
legal
to go
paperwork
through.
we had to go through to get the rights to broadcast this. Because coincidentally, people don't know this. At the same time, I would like to say we thought of this name first, because NBC 2 weeks later came out with their version of Tokyo Tonight. I would just like to say we had Tokyo Tonight on the air first. As they had it after 2 days of contest, we had this the day before contest started. So I would just like to say we had the name Tokyo Tonight on the air first.
But of course, we are thankful to NBC Universal for allowing us to broadcast.
We are. Well, Ed, it's been a pleasure, and it's time to wrap up. And that concludes WRHU's coverage of the Tokyo Olympics. I'm Max Sacco with my co-host Ed Mabeza. Our interview today was brought to you by Josh Linsenberg. Again, thank you to Kenny Albert. Our interview was again brought to you by Josh. Ryan Pagano gave us our sports update, and John DeSousa was behind the board pushing all the right buttons. Tokyo Tonight was produced by Ed Mabeza and Max Sacco. And from your 3-time Marconi Award-winning and 2021 UNESCO World Radio Day station, I'm Max Sacco saying have a good night, Long Island. Stay safe. And coming up next is the Rock and Roll Oasis. Thank you for joining us all throughout this Olympic season. Only here on 88.7 FM, Radio Hofstra University.
All thoughts and opinions expressed here on Tokyo Tonight do not necessarily reflect the views of Hofstra University, the Board of Trustees, or Radio Hofstra University. All sound is courtesy of NBC Universal and the Associated Press. All contrasting thoughts or suggestions can be sent to programming at WRHU.org or to room 127 Herbert Hall, 111 Hofstra University, Hempstead, New York, 11549. You're listening to 88.7 FM, WRHU Hempstead.
Proudly broadcasting from the Richard Philip Cavallaro Studio.
WRHU.
Hempstead.
You discovered
a cornerstone of the Lawrence Herbert School of Communication.
WRHU.